Most people focus far too much on the problem itself and not enough on finding a solution that's under their control. I'll be honest, I'm guilty of this too, and I've got many examples. Don't like a champ because you think it's too strong? Common kind of cope responses are begging for nerfs, especially going on Twitter and adding particular rioters, or complaining about a specific interaction. An example of this is Quinn's E with some auto attack enhancing abilities. It can be very obnoxious to deal with when you go to try to hit her, and then she cancels it with her E. Other examples can be something like Gragas E, Mill E, Akali W. There's plenty of annoying interactions with other abilities. Just because you don't like how it works doesn't mean it's okay to die to it after the first time though. You have to actually be willing to adapt once you learn the new information on how the interaction works. Continuing to complain about it, even if it's on Twitter, adding rioters isn't going to change anything. Alternatively, you have the obvious solution that's in your control. You could ban that particular champion, but maybe you have another champion that you want to ban already. So then learn how to play around it then. Mess around in practice tool or norms and come up with some form of solution to the interaction or the champion in general. Understand its strengths and weaknesses. What kind of fights does that champion like to take? Going back to the Quinn example, with Garen versus Quinn, even though you may not be able to Q straight into her, you could look to bait out her E and then use Ghost to chase her down. Or perhaps with a different champion, you may have a different interaction that you could use. The point is that there's always some way to play around it. You just have to be a little bit more creative sometimes. And if you can't come up with a way, ask somebody else, or watch a VOD on YouTube and see if they play it differently. You may not be able to always win right at level 3 or 4, but perhaps later on, if you play it carefully, you can find a window. Instead of saying, he just stat checks me, okay, then find another way to get an advantage. Maybe you should be going for short trades instead of long trades. Could look to proxy, roam. You don't always have to just straight up fight to the death. If you're playing jungle and you get invaded by the champ you don't like, maybe watch some VODs of the champ and see the common places that they like to invade and why do they like to invade on that timing. Perhaps you should be warding level 1 to defend against it against champions like Graves, Kindred that can go over walls easily. Against Bel'Veth and Kayn as well that like to steal your Raptors level 1. If you think your champion or role is weak, some common responses to that are, again, flaming riders, especially Freak, or begging for buffs, quite the opposite of the earlier points, while refusing to attempt to push through your weak points. The solution is adapting your build or a way that you play instead of saying there's nothing I can do and swapping champs. There's always a way to make a champion work. It just may not be as obvious as it seems. If you're complaining about your role, get over yourself. My teammates suck. That's why I can't climb. That's a pretty common one as well. Some will even go so far as to claim that Riot has engagement optimized matchmaking, which is where they will make your games easier or harder depending on if you're on a win streak or a loss streak in order to continue to keep you playing, and they try to force you into 50% win rate. Some of that is true, but it's not in a malicious way. It is simply it's trying to test your skill level. What people don't like to admit is that yes, you have to actually improve in order to climb in solo queue. All you have to do is admit that you aren't playing as well as you think you are and focus on consistently doing your job well. If you aren't climbing, then it sounds like you aren't doing your job that well. I've even heard people flame Happy Chime noises because their teammates doing a really weird pick or item build that Happy Chime noises recently did a video on. Getting mad at Happy Chime noises isn't going to change that situation. Just play the game like normal. The last example I have is if you keep missing skill shots or mechanically misplaying in general. Don't just give up and say you have no mechanics, you're too old, whatever other excuse you have. The good response to this is thinking about what you could do to play the fight better next time. Was the fight really rushed because you didn't take the time to think about who you wanted to focus? Were you aiming for their feet like you're supposed to because that's where their hitbox is instead of the middle of their body? Was there a better time to throw your skill shot? Should you have waited for your opponent to use their dash first? There's a lot that goes into mechanics beyond just how well you can aim your mouse. A lot of it comes down to your intention with aiming your mouse. Back to what I said at the beginning of the video. Focus on what's under your control. If you come up with a solution and it requires someone else to do something, then it's probably not a good solution. You should keep looking. It's even worse when you come up with problems that don't actually exist, such as saying that winner's queue and loser's queue exists, or you have some other mental block that's getting in the way. Focus on what you can do.